What's up, nerds? Zach the Goblin here. Warhammer 40K is such an immense setting, and with almost 40 years of development and lore, there are going to be a lot of differing opinions. Some are based, and some others not. But I think that is part of the fun and why I asked for your Warhammer 40K hot takes. This is the third video of this type I have done, so if you enjoy this one, go check out the first two. I made a post a couple days ago and I received a lot of good ones, and even if yours didn't make it into this video, that doesn't mean that it won't be in the next one. But that being said, you can never have enough, so let me know some of your hot takes in the comments below or in that post, and you may be featured in a future video. Or just let me know if you agree or disagree with me or the hot take itself. This video was actually longer, but I had a comment that, let's just say, I had a lot to say about, and the raw audio for that section was so long that I needed to split the video in two. So I will add a few more takes and release part 2 in a couple of weeks. Okay, let's get into your Warhammer 40K hot takes. I will be discussing what I agree with, what I disagree with, and just general yapping. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Warhammer 40K content. Let's get to it. It's Goblin time. Okay, as always, I like to set the stage for these, let you know what you're in for. I like these videos to be a little bit more off the cuff. I don't write out my responses for these. I just kind of talk my way through my thoughts. I think they're a little more honest that way. But because of that, I just want to warn you that I will go off the rails a little bit from time to time. As I mentioned in the intro, I will be yapping, and I am a top tier yapper. And since a lot of these hot takes are inherently opinion-based, even if I don't agree with you, it doesn't mean I don't respect you or your opinion. I just see things from a different point of view. As long as the take is within reason, which usually I wouldn't have to say, but you'll see later. Ultimately, what I'm trying to say is, this is all for fun. Don't take me too seriously. But anyways, enough of that. Let's get into it. Okay, we're going to start with a few quick and easy ones before we get into the more spicier takes, in my opinion. This first one comes from Memento Mori, who says, "We need more weird/unconventional matchups in the books. I recently finished Valador, not to be confused with Valdor. It had Eldar versus Tyranids and was a super good book. 40K is such a vast universe, we need more books with 0 humans." I would agree with this take. I think fleshing out other factions is never a bad thing. To add on, I think another part of the allure of 40K is that there's so much going on. And because of this, there's so many different stories that could be told. And I think allowing for books without the Imperium of Man really opens up what can be done. And for the naysayers, the human-only enjoyers, I would just say, you don't have to read the book. It existing does literally nothing negative towards your enjoyment. Or at least shouldn't. If it does, that says more about you than anything else. Again, more options isn't a bad thing in this context, even if you choose not to indulge. Like, to date, I haven't read any Tau books, but I'm not upset that they exist. Like, I think it's cool that they exist. I just haven't been interested in reading them yet. But yeah, to sum it up, I agree. Different combinations, different matchups is good. Now, this next commenter, Zeal of the Marty, has 2 hot takes, and I'm going to be tackling them in order. The first one says, "Rogue Trader is a way better 40K game than Space Marine 2, and it's not even close." And yeah, I very much agree with this one. Like, don't get me wrong, Space Marine 2 is good and cool and all of that, but it only really shows like one aspect of 40K. Like, it's very narrow in scope, which for a video game isn't a bad thing. And I'd even say it does the best job of showing how dominating Space Marines can be. Like, the presentation of Space Marines is really, really good in Space Marine 2. Surprise, surprise. But as far as 40K as a wider setting, I would say that Rogue Trader is much better. I just think it introduces more and it tackles the vibe a lot better. Again, not to take anything away from Space Marine 2. And I would even go so far as to say that Space Marine 2 would have more broad appeal. It's simpler, it's easier to get into. CRPGs aren't always going to be everyone's cup of tea. Now, to tackle their second hot take, they said, "GW butchered the Lion to make him less grimdark in the grimdark setting. Seriously, the Lion I like was the 30K one, not whatever the thing we have in 40K at the moment." And I disagree with this one. What? Are we afraid of a little character growth in our grimdark setting? But in all seriousness, yeah, they do seem like 2 different characters almost. So I do get not liking the disconnect or preferring one over the other. Now, I do enjoy 30K Lion, but I do also like his growth into the current setting. But yeah, I disagree. I like the 40K Lion, but this is really just a preference thing. Okay, now we're getting a little more spicy. We're not up to that later boiling point that I promised yet, but I think this one might spark some discussion in the comments. We have Secretary Gaming, who says, "The Mechanicus should replace Space Marines as the poster faction for Warhammer 40K." Now, I don't think this is going to be very popular, and I'm not saying I completely agree, but I do see the argument for it. I think Space Marines are the poster faction for Warhammer 40K because they're really cool and they're easy to identify. You kind of know what they're about. They're more likely to bring new people in. That being said, I think the Mechanicus show the grim darkness of 40K much better. I think they're a much better representation of that. So if you were to say which faction represents 40K better, I would agree that the Mechanicus probably do, but because of all the other reasons, I think that it makes sense for the Space Marines to still be the poster faction, and the fact that they're just more popular, but there is an argument to be made there. Okay, we're ramping up a little bit more now with this take from Jiv9673, who says, hot take. The Imperium, for the most part, is not that bad to live in. At least not as bad as many memes show. Most of the Imperium is left untouched by enemies, and worlds are free to do what they want so long as they worship the Emperor, pay the tithe, and resist Xeno influence. Hive worlds, whilst containing most of the population, are the vast minority of Imperial worlds. Okay, I'm going to tackle that last sentence first, because I think that's where most of the problem lies. I would say that when it comes to how bad of a place the Imperium is to live, you have to take into where are you more likely to be. Now, I'm just throwing out random percentages just to kind of illustrate my point. But if 99% of the population lives in hive cities, that is 99% of the Imperium. The Imperium of man, as with any state, is its people, not its land. Like, if you were to randomly be born into the Imperium, where are you more likely to end up? You're not going to end up on one of these paradise worlds. You're going to end up in a hive city. As far as deciding how bad or good of a place it is to live in, you can't just make the argument, well, I know that most everybody lives in hive cities and it really sucks to live in hive cities, but like there's a couple planets where there's only like 100 people, or there's only like a couple thousand, or like, you know, 1 million, which is a really small amount when it comes to 40K. It's not that bad for them, but they're like the vast minority. Are there more planets like that? Yeah, but there's no people there in comparison to these other parts of the Imperium. So like that argument's kind of a nothing sandwich. Let me try to paint a picture to kind of illustrate what I mean a little more. Let's say you have this planet, right? And everybody lives on that planet. Or let's say there's 100 people in the Imperium of Man. Let's just make it the number simple. And 95 of those 100 live on the hive planet. And on that planet, there's not a lot of resources. Most of the people live in squalor, etc., etc. You know, working 20-hour days. It just kind of sucks. But then you have this other planet next to it that has 5 people, the remaining 5 people, but it's like a lush paradise. When you average them out, they both suck. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, you can't base how good it is to live in the Imperium of Man by how those lucky 5 people live. You have to do it based on how the average person lives. And the average person in 40K, I would say, you know, it isn't that great. Now, I do agree that a lot of memes make it out to be a lot worse, but I wouldn't say it's not bad. Because again, it's not about the land that is owned by the Imperium. It's about the people, because the land isn't alive. The planets aren't alive. It's about where the people actually live. But ultimately, I just think the logic behind this is a little flawed. But again, this is one of those takes that ultimately you can think what you want. It doesn't really matter. Okay, now this is the one that I was talking about in the intro. This is the one that I take the most issue with. Now, as always, I'm going to do my best to be nice. I've kind of convinced myself that this was written by an edgy 14-year-old that doesn't know better. So, you know, I don't want any hate going their way or anything like that. And if you are this person, just know that I'm going to try to explain myself the best way possible. I'm not just going to be like, hey, fuck you for thinking this. So, you know, hear me out. I might be able to expand your worldview a little bit. Now, there are multiple takes in this comment, and it's kind of a roller coaster, so I'm going to take you through it in the same way in order that I read it. Now, there will be timestamps for the different sections of this comment, but I really do think this is best digested in order. Okay, we have commenter Warhammer 40K Sororitas fan who says, the only reason Games Workshop made Vulcan and the Salamanders nice is only because they're black. Now, what's the implication here? Now, when I was reading this, I had my theories, but I wasn't entirely sure what you were trying to say with that. So, you know, I just wasn't going to discuss it because I don't want to misrepresent you. So then I moved on. The historically inspired legions. Example, Space Wolves equals Space Vikings, Black Templars equals German and Templars, White Scars equals Genghis Khan and the Mongolians, Blood Angels equals Transylvanian, Ultramarines are Roman Empire, etc., etc. All these legions should remain mono-ethnic. Now, I disagree with this on many levels, examples, and I'm going to break it down point by point. First, I'm going to start with the nitpicky point. The Black Templars are not a legion. They are second founding. They're a chapter. They were always a chapter. The legion that they are split from is the Imperial Fists. But ultimately, that's not really important to what you're saying, so I just wanted to be a little bit of a dick. But anyways, to the meat and potatoes of the argument. It doesn't really make sense for these factions to be mono-ethnic. You'd have to suspend your disbelief so much, like even to the extremes of Warhammer 40K, which you already have to do anyways. Let's take the Ultramarines, for example. They recruit from the 500 worlds of Ultramar. There is 0% chance that everybody on those planets are going to be the same ethnicity. And it's also ridiculous to think that the Ultramarines would turn down a good candidate just because they were not the right ethnicity for their vibes. It seems kind of silly and way too unrealistic. But let's say they only recruited from one world. That would still be ridiculous. A whole planet wouldn't be the same ethnic group. You know how we know this? Because we live on a planet and not everybody is the same ethnic group. Your traits change based on where you live, whether that be closer to the equator or, you know, loads and loads of other factors. Also, I do think it's kind of telling that your examples aren't even accurate. Let's say with the Ultramarines. The Roman Empire was not mono-ethnic. They were not all, as we would consider today, Italian. The Roman Empire was a melting pot. It had those groups of people. It had Greek people. It had Celts, Egyptians, Germans, Jewish people. I mean, you get the point, right? Even your example isn't mono-ethnic. Same with Transylvania. They're not mono-ethnic either. There's Romanians, Hungarians, and other smaller ethnic groups. Again though, not mono-ethnic. But let's give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you didn't mean mono-ethnic, maybe you meant monocultural, which in that case, I would agree. Yeah, I think the Ultramarines should always be kind of Roman Empire coded. The Space Wolves should be Space Vikings, you know, etc. I do agree with that, like from a cultural standpoint. Like a Space Wolf should feel like a Space Wolf. An Ultramarine should feel like an Ultramarine. But their ethnicity doesn't really have anything to do with that, like at all. But moving on to something that I still disagree with, but a little more in a lighthearted way. You said Konrad Curze did things right on Nocturne when he was the Night Haunter. Now, I would say that he did not. I'm not saying that I have an alternative and I know what he should have done, but the reason I say he didn't is because, and this is true for pretty much all of the planets that him and his legion conquered, the moment he left, the fear was gone and they went back to doing what they were doing before. It literally did not work. It wasn't lasting. So it's hard for me to say that he did the right thing when it didn't actually do anything. Okay, I don't have so much to say about the next thing. The Emperor was right to want to destroy religions, to want to destroy all religions. I would say, for the most part, with what we know about chaos and stuff, yeah, I would agree. I just don't really have much more to contribute with that. Next, they said, the Imperium are the good guys of the universe. I don't care what people think about the political system and or the supposed xenophobia of the Imperium. I'm going to stop there. It's not supposed. They are xenophobic, like by definition. Whether or not you say it's justified is another thing, but like there's no supposed xenophobia. They are xenophobic. But anyways, when you were human and all the alien races of the galaxy wished to massacre the humans of the Warhammer 40K universe, we put ourselves on the side of humans, on the side of humanity. Now on face level, I don't think there's actually anything wrong with this take necessarily. I think on a macro level, it's wrong, which I might get flack for, but I will explain myself. You don't have to agree with me on this one though. I don't think there's like 100% right or wrong in this case, but I would like to nitpick a little bit. Not all the alien races want to massacre the humans. There are plenty of Eldar who don't. The Tau would much rather just encompass humans into the fold. They don't on the whole really want to massacre. And yes, I know the Tau are a conglomeration of races, not just one race, but you get what I'm saying. But yeah, if that's how you want to enjoy 40K as the Imperium of man, I'm a human, they're a human, so they're the good guys, that's fine. Enjoy your fiction however you want to enjoy it. I don't really care. Now, on a macro level, on like an outside meta level, they aren't the good guys because we can see all sides. That's kind of the beauty of being a fictional universe and not being real, is we can see all the other different factions at play and we could still be like, oh, the Imperium of man are still bad guys. But if you want to RP it and be like, if you were in the universe, would you want to be in the Imperium of man? Yeah, sure. There's nothing wrong with it thinking that. But I do want to piggyback off of this and yap about something that I think is an issue in general that goes beyond 40K. And I'm not necessarily saying that this person in particular is doing this, because I don't know. And if you don't want to listen to me yap about this, you can skip ahead here. But I want to talk about the rise of anti-intellectualism. And in this case, I'm talking about the lack of being able to analyze media in general. More specifically, and again, I'm not saying that's what this person is doing. They could be, I don't know, but I'm not saying that they are. But the inability to see things not from your point of view. Like, oh, I'm a human, so I always have to side with humans in this fictional, not real universe. I can't even imagine that the humans might be the bad guys. Like, you should be able to see things from different points of view. In life and in media, things are very, very rarely black and white. Like, these are the good guys and these are the bad guys. Like, that doesn't really exist in the real world, and it definitely doesn't exist in 40K. Now, there are factions that are much worse and more reprehensible than the Imperium of Man. I'm not saying that they're all the same level of bad guy, but let's go back to the Comet, for example. You can use the same logic to explain why the Eldar are the good guys. Oh my god, I'm an Eldar, and the humans, the Imperium of Man, want to wipe my race from the face of the galaxy. Well, yeah, if you look at it from the Eldar's perspective, the humans are the bad guys. And I'm using the Eldar as an example, but of course, the same could be applied to the Tau. But yeah, from different perspectives, different people are the bad guys. Now, there are factions that I would say are always bad. The Orcs, as much as I love them, they are villains. They're not the good guys. The Drukhari, they're bad. Chaos is bad. Again, I think there are factions that are much worse than the Imperium, but you can't really consider the Imperium of Man the ultimate good guys of the universe just because you're human. Now, from inside the universe, if you were in 40K, that's a different argument. You could make that. But the thing is, we are not. Again, we are as gods. We can see everything. We don't have to narrow our mind down to just one point of view. That's the beauty of having an analyzing mind. Now, again, that's not to say you can't enjoy 40K that way. You can. The Imperium of Man is my favorite faction. I prefer them over all the Xenos factions. I'd be like for the Emperor and shit. But like when I take myself out of the universe and I kind of like am just me, I understand that they are also villains in their own right. But like they're my villains, right? Like, do you see the difference there? Is I can see it from the other faction's point of view. I can analyze it. I can see beyond myself. And I think we are kind of losing that in today's society a little bit, not to be on my soapbox too much. And I'll end this little subsection with this. If after all of that, you're still like, yeah, well, I don't care. I'm a human, so I'm always going to side with the humans no matter what. I'm just going to see them as the heroes because I am a human. That's fine. You're free to do so, but I think you're doing yourself and your brain a big disservice. And the difference can even be as subtle as they're human, I'm human, so they're good no matter what, versus the Chad, yeah, they're bad, but I'm also human, so I'm going to side with them. Like, those are very different. You see what I'm saying? And one last little caveat, because again, media literacy and literacy in general is at an all-time low. I'm not saying that there are no good people in the Imperium of Man. There are good people, there are good sub-factions. I'm saying that you can't really consider the faction, the Imperium of Man as a whole, to be unequivocal good guys. That's all I'm saying. And I think you should be able to understand that nuance. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now. I'm going to skip over the next part. I'll still have it on screen so you can read it, but I don't have super much. I just don't agree with it, but I'm already way over time. I'm looking at my time right now. I need to get on and talk about the last part, which is when I was like, oh shit. The Orcs' reproduction system by spores is completely incoherent. In addition to being really cracked in terms of birth rate, the Orcs should have already overturned the galaxy given the physical superiority that they have and the numerical superiority induced by this reproduction system. Okay, now there's a little bit more. But before I get to that part, that bombshell, I'm going to quickly talk about this part. I think the spores reproduction is actually really good. And I think it really comes down to you fundamentally misunderstanding what the Orcs are and what they represent. Yes, the Orcs have the numbers to overtake the entire galaxy. That's the point. That's the point of the Orcs. They are the green tide. And the only reason they haven't done this is because they can't organize into a coherent force. They spend just as much time fighting amongst themselves as they do against anybody else. And that's exactly what makes the Orcs so scary, is the knowledge that if they ever could get a leader that banded together all of the Orcs and could have them adhere to any semblance of really good strategy, the rest of the galaxy would have no chance. But luckily for everyone, that will never happen because the Orcs are too dumb and they like to fight amongst themselves too much. But that threat in the back of your head of the unstoppable green tide is important for the orcs' characterization. And you couldn't have that if they reproduced by normal means, because it would be less plausible for them to keep up their numbers. I would think that if they reproduced by normal means, they would be wiped out by now, with all the infighting and all the wars, you know, and all that stuff. And this is the part where I was kind of like, oh, I think this person kind of just has a surface level understanding of 40K, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not a bad person for that. You know, you can enjoy it, again, however you want. I don't really care. And I almost didn't want to say that because I didn't want to be mean, but that's kind of what it feels like, especially when taken in combination with the previous part that I let you read on your own that says that the orcs and Tau are stupid factions that don't contribute anything to the lore. I think you're just not aware of the lore. But ultimately, the nail in the coffin was the last sentence of this comment, which says, I would have preferred a more basic and simpler reproduction system like the ones we see in Japanese dark fantasy works, like in Goblin Slayer, for example. This was when I was like, oh, this is an edgy kid. Or at least I hope that's the case. But yeah, I don't think I need to explain what my issues with this are. Not only would that be an actually just bad alternative, like it wouldn't make sense, it wouldn't be good for the orcs, they wouldn't be able to keep up, like it just wouldn't actually work, like functionally. It's kind of weird that that's like where you went, I think, personally at least. And for those who don't know, because I wasn't exactly sure, like I remember the Goblin Slayer first episode controversy way back when, but to explain, the goblins of that universe are monogendered, just like the orcs, and how they reproduce is they capture the women of different races, humans and elves, and forcefully impregnate them. That's what this person is suggesting that the orcs of 40K should do. I'm just gonna leave it at, I don't agree. I think that's a very bad idea. I don't really feel like I need to explain myself or explain why it's kind of weird to suggest. And not even to say that horrific things don't belong in media in any way, shape, or form, because they do. Depictions of certain things make sense depending on the context of the work. But to prefer that over other things, I think is a little weird. Also, Goblin Slayer? You couldn't have picked like a better manga or anime? You had to pick Goblin Slayer? Why was that your go-to example? This is me mostly just clowning on you for your taste in anime, but like pick something good. I don't know. Like there's oceans of better dark fantasy fiction. And to sum it up, I think some of these takes were pretty bad. Some of them were more lukewarm. I even agreed with some. It kind of just feels like you have a surface level understanding of 40K. Like maybe you only know about the things that you really, really like, which seems to be just edgelord stuff, and you don't really know about the other things, but I would say that that doesn't mean that those other things don't exist. And also, there's nothing inherently wrong with only having a surface level understanding of something that you like. That's okay. Like, you're still allowed to like it. You're still allowed to enjoy it. You're still allowed to enjoy all the things you like about it. Like, I'm not hating on you for that. Hell, nobody knows everything about 40K. There are big gaps in my knowledge as well, you know? And again, I kind of feel like this is coming from like a 14-year-old boy or something. You know what I mean? I could be wrong. I have no idea the age or gender of this person, but that's just kind of the vibes I'm getting. So maybe I'm being a little less harsh because, hey, I was an edgy 14-year-old once, you know? I got better. There's a silver lining. I don't think it's too late for you or anything. But that being said, if you're like 30 and saying this, pack it up, brother. You're done. Prepare to be an incel for the rest of your life. You know, I can't help you there. Thank you so much for staying till the end of the video. It really does mean a lot. I appreciate each and every one of you. Let me know what you would like to see in the future in the comments. And until next time, Goblin out.